Hello everyone, this is Kristen with Quest and welcome to Cloud HCM Week. Today's session is Extending Your Cloud Potential with Visual Builder Studio for HCM with Karen Long from Alaris. Do have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. All attendee lines are in mute and will stay in mute throughout this session. If you have any questions, please put them in the question drop-down box that's located on your GoToWebinar panel, and we will answer those at the end of the session. And another reminder that this session is being recorded and will be uploaded into the Quest content library. So at this time, I'm going to hand things over to Karen to get things started.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. Hi, everyone. As Kristen said, I am Karen Long, and I will be presenting today's session about Visual Builder Studio for HCM. Okay, so a little bit about me. I am a senior consultant within Alaris Cloud HCM practice. I've worked over 6 years in the Oracle Cloud space, typically focusing on reporting and analytics as well as functional core HR, but I am delving into other areas such as autocomplete and Visual Builder Studio as well. A little bit about Alaris. We are PeopleSoft to Cloud experts with over 16 plus years of on-prem expertise in PeopleSoft. And really focusing on that PeopleSoft to Cloud transformation. We have a lot of great accelerator tools to help clients who are moving from PeopleSoft to HCM. Deep understanding and expertise with our consultants. Lots of experts in common cloud pain points and roadblocks. Okay, so now on to the fun stuff, Visual Builder. So what is Visual Builder? I'm sure many of you online might already know about what it is, but for anyone who doesn't, it is a platform for developing and deploying contemporary applications within your Oracle SaaS cloud environment. There's also a few different variations that it doesn't necessarily need to go hand in hand with cloud, but we're really excited about the current offering of Visual Builder Studio that is given to cloud customers. It's a managed service, meaning Oracle takes care of complex tasks such as database maintenance, web server management, and security measures, leaving you a ready-to-use environment specifically for the creation and deployment of your applications. Visual Builder is built on a foundation of HTML5. It uses JavaScript, Oracle Jet to be specific to manage user interfaces, CSS3 for creating the desired aesthetics, and REST services for back-end data connections for operations like creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. When it comes to the REST service integration, we'll talk more about this, but it's worth noting that the Oracle SaaS application service catalog is seamlessly integrated and readily available to your user interface. So Oracle makes it very easy to access the HCM business objects. It also can access the ERP catalog, supply chain management, and CX. So there's, in addition to HCM, it can access those other large catalogs. Okay, so who is it for? It's built for anyone to design, build, and deploy visual applications. So for anyone familiar with the Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence, the analytics, it's a very visual, so lots of drop and drag features. So you don't have to be a developer to use it. It's good for low code developers, as well as the serious developers who want to extend applications and those experienced programmers as well. So a bit on architecture. So there's Visual Builder, our visual app building platform. This is the space where we're actually constructing our applications, both visually using that drag and drop feature and through writing code. Then there's the Visual Builder Studio piece, and that addresses the remaining aspects of the development process. So within the Visual Builder Studio is where we have the Git repositories, issue tracking, code review instruments, and the integrated build system for continuous and expedited creation and deployment of your applications. So we've got the actual Visual Builder where we're creating those pages, and then the Studio gives us all those additional features, which are really, really great, like I've heard some people mention that the studio could be used even without creating the application with the features that it offers for project management and issue tracking. Okay, on to the next slide. So some differences between the VB versions. So I'm focused on today the Visual Builder Studio that is embedded for HCM and SaaS, HCM, SaaS, Cloud Fusion application customers. This is the instance provided within your Fusion environment. There's no separate license needed. It's deployed and integrated into Fusion apps directly. There's also some license versions, and we have the Visual Builder OIC version and the Visual Builder standalone. And there are some differences. One of the big differences is in the HCM SaaS embedded version, there is not a built-in database. And if you want to access external REST APIs, there's some limitations regarding authentication. So REST APIs that don't require authentication can be accessed, but ones that do, there's some currently in the HCM SaaS embedded version that's not possible unless you get the licensed version. Keep doing that. Okay, on to our next slide. So Redwood has definitely been a large topic of discussion in the past several years. And a lot of times Redwood and Visual Builder sound like they go hand in hand. So a slide about where is Redwood Design, or what is Redwood Design, and where does it fit in with the Visual Builder? Oracle's Redwood is a pioneering user experience design movement aimed at transforming the traditionally functional focused enterprise applications into more engaging and user-friendly ones. So it's about a real specific look and feel. And it's a key role in Oracle Visual Builder is that it equips developers with a library of pre-designed Redwood components that are both visually appealing and user-oriented, following the Redwood principles. So those components that are accessible within Visual Builder Studio cover a broad range of different functionalities, like searching and filtering data, headers, more complex patterns like that fold-out page. If those of you using connections are pretty familiar with, you can take that layout and put it into your Visual Builder application. So the big advantage here is that developers no longer have to code every single feature from scratch to deliver that same level of user experience. So they can take advantage of all these pre-built design components. Definitely speeding up the build or the build process. So for anyone who may not be familiar with Redwood, but is using something like Journeys or Connections, or has seen the org chart or person profile, all of these are built on Visual Builder and have the Redwood components within them. So there's definitely some telltale signs that you're looking at a Redwood application. So log into HCM, and if you go to an app like Connections or Journeys, once you open that application button, you'll first see 3 dots appear. So that is a telltale sign you are in a Redwood Visual Builder page. Another telltale sign is the look and feel. So in Connections, there's that fold out layout. And then the third telltale sign is if you go into your settings and you look through your dropdown, you'll see an edit page in Visual Builder. So that's a way to tell, this is definitely a Redwood Visual Builder application. So what are the uses of Visual Builder? for HCM teams. One of the big ones is extending delivered pages, such as connections or journeys. So to change the fields that you're displayed, or rearranging fields, or changing headings, that could be done in Visual Builder Studio on the already delivered application pages. And then the really exciting, and that's exciting enough, but another really exciting use of Visual Builder Studio within HCM is actually creating custom applications. And we are going to go over both of those uses, just some slides on what those uses would look like within your cloud application. So first, a note about getting started. There's 2 security roles that would be needed to access Visual Builder Studio within your cloud environment. That one is application developer and then application administrator. The next step would to provision a project. And if you're a developer, the admin would have to do that. And we'll take a look at what that setup looks like in a few slides. Okay, so the navigation is pretty simple. So if you are in a Visual Builder page, such as connections or journeys, you go to the Redwood page, settings and actions, and then edit page in Visual Builder. That's when you want to modify a delivered page that's built in Visual Builder. The second navigation is going to menu, using the navigator feature, going to configurations, and then Visual Builder. And that's typically used if you want to create that app. Okay, so here's a little, here's a picture of if you take that second navigation, you'll end up in the Visual Studio area. And I had mentioned a few of these features, but I want to call out some different pieces within the Visual Builder Studio. So first, you have that project. So this is where each application is developed. It's also where, if you're modifying a page, that will have its own project. Then within the project, we have workspaces. So this is a section where teams can work collaboratively on multiple projects together. So I might have a workspace, another developer on my team might have a workspace. We've had multiple workspaces within one project. The environment section is where we would link up to the different cloud instance. Over to the left, you'll see those different features that I was talking about. We have a Git area, we have Maven, we have an issues tracker. They have a wiki that could be used. So pretty great interface to do a lot of development. Okay, so now we're going to talk about that first use case for HCM customers. So we have a Visual Builder Studio page like connections or journeys, and we want to modify it. Maybe we want to change a field or restructure some of the data. Okay, so the navigation to do this would be going to the page, and then settings and actions, and then editing page. Okay, you'll note a few different things. So first you'll edit the page in Visual Builder. Then you'll be asked to either select a project or create a project. I would, if you're editing a page and you haven't already started on that, you would likely create a new project. If you have already started on it, you could already reference a project that was already created. And then when you get into the project, you'll have the layout of the page on your screen in Page Designer, which is great. And Visual Builder apps built by Oracle, not everything will be customizable. So you'll be able to scroll around your layout. And this is actually in the next slide. So what I wanted to note here is this is what we wanted to modify. We want to modify, let's say we want to modify the information about this employee in connections, and not just this employee, all employees. We want the form to look different. So then we create our project, and now we're in Page Designer. So the bottom left is what you will see when you edit an existing page and you get into Page Designer. And like I said, not everything will be editable. In this case, we want to edit that information about the employee. And if we scroll on the page, it will be highlighted in blue, the things that you can edit. So it is really dependent on what you can do based on the page you are trying to edit. Okay, so when I click on this, this payroll admin piece, it shows that it's a profile basic info card layout. And it turns out this is actually a dynamic component. And so dynamic components are rendered according to what is specified in a built-in rule. So Oracle has delivered a rule by default, and then they return a template by default. So you can't modify that default rule, but what you can do is create a copy of that rule and then make it your own. And whatever condition is met first, that rule will identify what template should be displayed on the page. So by copying the default rule, which doesn't have any logic in it, you make a exact replica, but you get to name it your own and return a custom template. And so here we have the default rule returning the default template. I basically just copied it and then said I want to return a demo template. And then once you have created that flow, then you are able to modify that custom template. You can't modify it with unlimited changes. You can change the fields that are available. You can reorder them. You can delete them. And say you did want it, you wanted an actual rule. In this case, the rule is just looking at the Quest demo rule first, and there's no condition, so it's automatically returning my custom template. But if I did have conditions, I could have multiple conditions. Say I want line managers to see one thing, or I want users in this role to see another thing. You can add as many rules, and whatever rule is triggered first, that's the template it will return. So then once you make your changes, you have the nice feature of previewing them with the play button. And once everything looks good to go, then you can publish with the publish button, all in that same interface. So it's definitely a little, there's definitely a learning curve to get used to that Page Designer and modifying the Redwood pages, but it's pretty exciting that that they have those Redwood components, and you can really do a lot there. Okay, so now we're going to move on to creating a new application extension. So rather than modifying a page, we are going to actually create our own new pages. So the navigation to do this, rather than going to the Redwood page and going to setting and actions, we would go to the navigator, configurations, and then visual builder. Our first step to do would be to create that project, that groups all the related artifacts, resources, and members working on a particular development effort. We can add additional team members. So if I'm collaborating with other people, I can add different users and give them different roles. So project owner, or a developer with limited access, or a contributor, which would be someone who can view it but not do the development. Okay, so then after we create our project, then we would connect to an environment. So we didn't have to do this when we were modifying an existing page, because it going in that first navigation, Oracle did that behind the scenes. But if we are creating a project from scratch, we would want to connect to our Oracle Cloud SaaS environment. So typically, dev first and then test, and then on to prod once it's ready. So then one note here is you can use the authentication method of identity domain. So if the user is signed into Oracle and then they go to this new UI, their Oracle credentials will be, that's how they'll be authenticated. Okay, so then we talked about this before, but the next thing would be to create those individual workspaces. And in this case, since we're extending the cloud application itself, we're going to choose a new application extension. And then this is something that is the really cool piece of Redwood. When you call in, when you're creating your new app extension, there is a base Oracle Cloud application dropdown. And when you click on Redwood reference application, that gives you access to all the Redwood components. Another note on this is you can connect to a sandbox. So say you have things going on in a sandbox that you want to make sure that you are referencing in your app extension, then you could connect to that sandbox if those changes weren't live. Okay, so once you create your workspace, you are in the main visual builder area, and you are going to create an app UI. And then on the main start page, the main start visual block, by clicking on that and clicking on the page, you can modify that first page. And here on this page, we can see we're in Page Designer, and we have all those Redwood pattern components that I mentioned. So this is really helpful because that library of components, you don't have to build from scratch. So you have basic UI elements such as buttons, text fields, checkboxes, drop-down menus, containers, data components, and then the Redwood components we have here. So all the components used in Redwood Design, so your application will automatically have that Redwood look and feel because you're using Redwood components. And it's a pretty nice layout. It's very visual, drag and drop. You have a component, you drag it over to the Page Designer, and there is some, just like anything, a learning curve with getting used to where the components go, and then the different components, depending on what component you select, you will have different options. Okay, so one really cool thing is, so we have that visual layout, but we also have a code view. And this is great because if a developer wants to do hands-on coding rather than the visual layout, they have that option. Okay, so we are going to take a quick build. We're going to do a quick build with a pretty cool feature or cool functionality of Visual Builder Studio. A practical example. So a common user interaction on an app might be asking the user to search for a specific employee. So we're going to go through that whole example of how we could create an app where there's a search feature and that returns HCM data. And then from there, of course, it can be extended much further to do actions and go on from there. But we're just starting with a basic example. And so the first thing we would do would, after we have a layout, we'd add in an input search. So this element enables users to type in text, facilitating search or data entry functionalities within the application. We're utilizing the placeholder field that will pop up to give the user hints about what to put into this input search. And then the next thing we're going to do when we have this input search up is to associate a page variable with it. This step is pretty crucial because it will allow us to make a connection from the user and the underlying data structure of the application. So that brings me to our next step. So currently we are not connected to the HCM data. So we'll want to create a service connection. To do this, Oracle makes it super simple. There's a little area where you add service connections. And then, for HCM and ERP customers, it's basically selecting, human capital management, and then viewing all of the different business objects available, and then selecting that business object. And now within the app, you have access to HCM data. Okay. So now that we have our access to the data, we are going to add another component to our page. So we have the input search with the variable. We have access to the HCM data. Now we're going to bring in a list view, and that basically lists data. And the nice thing about Visual Builder, a lot of the components you add will have a quick start guide. So in this case, it says now that you've added a list view, identify what data should be returned in that. And since we already have our connection to the HCM catalog, when we click on the add data, it will let us access our catalog and that business object that we selected as the source of the data that's going to be returned in our list view. Then once we say, we want it to bring the worker data from the HCM catalog, we get to choose a template. And these templates can be modified, but depending on what you're trying to do, it might be, the delivered templates might be just fine. Then we get to mapping our variable to the parameter. So this is our big step. So we've created that variable in our input search, and we named it search bar. So that was what the user is going to enter. Then in this step, we'll actually map it to something called filter criterion. And there's where the real magic happens. We can say if the worker data display name contains what was entered in that search bar, then return. Or if the user entered in a department name, and that's what and that matches a department name on the work relationship from the worker, then bring that record. So you could go really be very flexible in what you let the user enter in, or if you wanted the user to have to bring in an exact person number, it could be done that way as well, or you can add that flexibility. Okay, so now we've created that variable, and then we've brought in HCM data in the list view, and we've linked that the HCM data that is brought in to the user input. And so, and then from there, we can keep going and building on this. We're not going to go into it in this session, but after this, brings back, this allows users to search for people and then bring them back. And then you can go on to add actions, you can edit information, you can call these things an action chain where it's a series of events, you can add buttons, you can have links to a URL, which might be, it could be even a report. So lots more to do, just scratching the surface to give an idea of the Visual Builder Studio and its connection with Oracle HCM Cloud. Okay, so after all that exciting development has occurred, you can use the play button to preview. If multiple developers are working on the same app UI, their changes need to be merged, to the main line. So it definitely can get pretty complex when you're creating a UI with multiple developers. But if everything is merged, then the changes can be published. Okay, and so there are, in addition to the Oracle University training, which I'm going to touch on later, there's a ton of great resources available for your VB journey. There's the Redwood portal for the design components. Then there's a Visual Builder LinkedIn group, a Visual Builder blog, and that's great because they're telling all sorts of use cases to use with Visual Builder. Very, very helpful to review. And I know it's been around for some time, but I really think there's just a ton of momentum now that people are creatively creating a ton of different use cases and sharing that information in the LinkedIn group or the blog. And then Customer Connect is another way to get to great resources. It's really helpful because Shay Smeltzer does office hours quite frequently and has a whole slew of previous office hours as well as new ones upcoming about specific topics that are pretty big. And then if you're looking for a step-by-step guide to creating an app UI, there on Oracle, docs.oracle.com, there's a pretty nice tutorial to just walk through the basic steps. Okay, and so this is what I wanted to really call out. There is a free certification until August 31st for the Oracle Redwood application developer, and it includes Visual Builder and combines that with the Redwood Design system. So definitely something to look into if you're interested in continuing on with your journey. So that actually concludes this. I think I spoke a little quicker than intended, but definitely follow us at Alir Inc. Visit our website, alir.com, and you can also reach out to me directly with any questions at karen.long@alir.com. And that being said, I know Kristen was monitoring the chat box. If there's any questions, can definitely talk through those now.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Yeah, we have a few. So if you still want to get them in, type those out and we'll read those out. So the first one is, how can we use Oracle database for custom apps? Is there any native connectors?
So could you read that one more time?
Sure. How can we use Oracle database for custom apps? And then follow up is are there any native connectors?
So not that I've done. So I have been primarily focused within the HCM space, not the Oracle database. But that's a great question that hopefully I'm actually a sub for our guru at Visual Builder. So I can definitely reach out to him to follow up with. If you are building custom objects within HCM using the application developer, you can access those. Great question, and one that I can follow up on.
Okay. Second question, is there project in Visual Builder Studio? Is a project in Visual Builder Studio almost like a sandbox?
Yes, yep, I would say it is. So it isn't live until it's published. And it's kind of tricky because there's also the sandbox component that if you have a sandbox in your cloud environment, you can hit that, or you could hit what is published. But yes, it is like a sandbox where you can create and preview without making those changes live.
Perfect. Does quarterly updates have the potential to overlay page modification?
So that is definitely something to be on the watch for. There are some Visual Builder differences where you don't have to get the updates to your Visual Builder applications on a quarterly basis. That's something I'm still looking into. But just like anything, I think any quarterly updates, the application and the changes to the pages should be tested, even if it's not specifically in the documentation. Just like I think a lot of the things are protected, but just on a rule of thumb, I would always do have some testing plan in place.
Perfect.
Great question.
Can developers create their own business objects?
Yes, they can. So that would happen in a standard with would create a business object within HCM, and you can access that within the HCM within the VBS.
And we do have somebody else who said that they have the same question about the custom app connector at Sinclair and is interested in the follow-up to that question. So Karen, I'll make sure that you get these questions so that you know who was asking that and you can follow up.
Great, thank you.
Maybe if you give us a few last words, Karen, in case somebody else has a question that hasn't come in. So if you do, just type those in and we'll read those out. And, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry, sorry, Kristen. Yeah, it's really a fun tool to start getting your hands on. There is a learning curve, but really a lot of great Oracle provided resources out there. There's a few of the different office hours that I mentioned, or the office hours that I mentioned, a few that are really like focused on a similar, how to use VBS for HCM applications. So lots of great resources out there, but very exciting what is possible now with this tool.
Fantastic. Oh, the one more question did come in. Is there a way to configure approvals as part of a custom application?
Yeah, so there is. So that would be within that action chain. You can really do a lot. I haven't explored approvals, but based on what I've seen, that should be possible. It would be complex, but it would be done within that action chain.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so very much, Karen. This has been great. I really love the engagement and all the questions that everybody is asking. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. A quick reminder that this will be on the Quest site and available to all Quest members after the event is over. And if you'd like more content just like today's session, we encourage you to attend Reconnect Dive Deep, which is a virtual event, October 23rd through 26th. So thank you so very much, Karen, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.